Today we're talking about the meta universe. What is the meta universe? Now I have to say this has nothing to do with the metaverse and Facebook and Zuckerberg and virtual reality. This is something completely different. The meta universe, totally different concept. And we're talking about it because a lot of people have this idea of the multiverse. And as we're going to see, the multiverse is actually a very flawed understanding of existence. And the meta universe is something that accounts for existence in a completely different way. So we have to understand, first of all, we have to get away from the idea of the multiverse, because a lot of people come to, the idea of consciousness, or maybe like a spiritual awakening or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it. And then they come to this idea of the multiverse because it sounds very, forward thinking or enlightened or mysterious or something. But it has to be really understood that multiverse is predicated on the idea that reality is material and only matter. So it's actually not an enlightened position. It stems from the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which scientists posit to try and understand quantum mechanics in a materialist way, and by not having to appeal to a mental aspect of reality. So I just want to make that clear, that a lot of people think, oh, multiverse, it's very open-minded, very enlightened. No, it actually comes from, ultimately, a dogmatic view that reality is material. It comes from quantum mechanics, because quantum mechanics, due to superposition, scientists try and figure out the collapse of the wave function and superposition in general, and how can there be these seemingly different outcomes. How come, for example, how come a particle takes one location rather than a different location? And because they can't figure out why a particle takes one location rather than another location, or a different one or another, or a set of infinite possible locations, for example, they come up with the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which says there's basically there's an infinity of universe for every possible outcome. And this leads to absurd results like an infinity of yous across the universe, and an infinity of different versions of all of us all doing, every possible action. So it's important to understand that this idea comes from trying to understand reality in a materialist way. If you realize that there is a mental aspect to reality, an essential inner aspect to reality, then you can understand that a particle takes one position rather than another based on internal mental programming, an internal trajectory. And so what many worlds does is it tries to get rid of the idea that there's a mental aspect to reality, or at least a hidden variable aspect to reality, and instead posits this, at least a mental hidden variable aspect to reality, and instead posits many multiverse. So anyway, this video isn't about multiverse. This video is about forget multiverse. Multiverse, it's just important to realize multiverse is not some kind of enlightened position. It actually was born from trying to understand quantum mechanics in terms of matter and only matter, getting rid of the mind element, or you might call it the element of spirit. But I like to mind, sentience, consciousness, all these different ideas, wants to eliminate those ideas as being fundamental. So, but what is then the meta universe? And I'm going to bring up this article here, again on medium.com, called Introducing the Meta Universe, the Mother of All Universes. And so this article actually goes on for a little while, but we're going to talk about a concept by Dwayne Elgin called the Meta Universe. And we're going to see that this concept of the Meta Universe is very close to what we talk about on this channel. It's not the same thing, but it comes close. So I'm going to scroll down until we actually start getting to what Dwayne Elgin talks about. All right, I want to make sure that I have that individual's name correctly. Elgin, yes, Dwayne Elgin. So let's talk about what Dwayne Elgin calls the meta universe. Before the Big Bang that gave birth to our cosmos, there existed an unimaginably vast, incomprehensibly intelligent, and infinitely creative life force that chose to bring our cosmos into manifest existence. So you can see this idea is very different from multiverse. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics stems on the idea that that the mental component to existence is not fundamental, but rather material. This idea of the meta-universe is taking the opposite position, saying that before the Big Bang, before the physical universe began, there existed an intelligent, creative life force that chose to bring the physical reality into existence. It is the meta-universe that created and now continuously sustains our cosmos as a unified organism. It is quite conceivable that the meta-universe has created an array of cosmic systems, of which ours may be only one. So, I want to talk about this idea of the meta-universe and how it ties into what we talk about here. So they're talking about this intelligent life force that brings the universe into existence and possibly an array of cosmic systems and operates as a unified organism. So moment by moment, the entire cosmos is being regenerated by an infinite field of life energy. The meta-universe is assumed to have been present before the Big Bang and is the generative ground out of which our universe, including the fabric of space-time, emerges in a flow of continuous creation. The meta-universe thus infuses, underlies, and transcends our cosmos. So the meta-universe is similar to what we talk about as the source or the absolute. These terms are not 100% interchangeable. The source and the absolute refer to different things, but similar things. And it's not the same as the meta-universe, but it has similarities. So just to be clear, the source, what we talk about as the source, is the fundamental mental aspect of reality. And in mathematical terms, it's defined as mental frequencies. Now, what is the absolute? The absolute is all existence. So once there's a physical world and human beings and all these different aspects of reality, the absolute is all of it. The source is the mental aspect of it. So the source is not the physical aspect. The source is the mental aspect. We call the physical aspect of reality the holos, okay? So we have the source and the holos, which is the mental aspect and the so-called physical aspect. But the holos stems from the source. It is a transformation of the source. It is an expression of the source, but it's not the source itself. It's an expression of it. And so the source is the mental aspect. The holos is the physical aspect. The absolute is all of it. It's both. It's everything. It's called the absolute because it's the all that there is. So when we talk about the source, we're talking about the mental aspect of the absolute. When we talk about the holos, we're talking about the physical aspect of the absolute. And you can understand this as the relationship between your mind and body. There's the mental aspect of you, your mind and your inner subjectivity, and your physical body. That's sort of the difference between the source and the physical universe, the holos, and then the absolute, which is all that there is. Now, they're talking about something called the meta-universe, which is extremely similar to the source. They're talking about it as an intelligent and infinitely creative life force that chose to bring our cosmos into manifest existence, and it continuously creates and sustains our cosmos as a unified organism. Yes, so the source, the mental aspect of existence, is the fundamental nature of reality, and everything else depends on it. And what they are calling here as life energy is what we know as frequencies and eternal mathematical frequencies, living frequencies. Sinusoidal waveforms. Now, these sinusoidal waveforms are able to interact together and to give rise to the so-called physical universe that we experience. And we know this through Fourier mathematics. It works similar to a hologram and interference patterns. Not exactly the same as a hologram as it's understood today, but very similar in dealing with interference patterns and Fourier mathematics and light and optics and things like that. So their idea of this of the meta-universe that was before the Big Bang, brought the Big Bang into existence, and is still there and underlies existence and sustains it, is what the source is. Now, I want to make a few contrast it a little bit, because they're talking about here an incomprehensibly intelligent and infinitely creative life force. Now, that chose to bring our cosmos into manifest existence. So I want to say here, and they talked about possibly having an array of, when they say an array of cosmic systems, if they mean an array of universes like multiverse, that part differs. So the source doesn't generate a multiverse. Multiverse has a huge number of problems, because what we are eternal monadic minds. We aren't our bodies. So there can't be an infinity of yous across the universe, because you are a mind. You aren't your bodies. You aren't your body. So you are a single unified mind. There aren't an infinity of yous. There is only a singular you. Every single one of us is a singular I within a system. Now, when it says that, however, there are universal cycles, which means the Big Bang occurs, the universe is generated, we have the experiences that we have, we learn, grow, understand. Then at the very end of space-time, the universe vanishes, because it's the end of space-time. All that could be has already been. We've learned everything we could learn. Evolution has reached its pinnacle. And so we turn to just a pure source. Then the Big Bang occurs again, and a different universe occurs, and this happens in universal cycles. It's the Stoics understood this. A lot of Eastern religions understood this. It was understood by Empedocles. A lot of philosophers, a lot of thinkers understood this idea of a cyclical reality. So there aren't a multiplicity of universes where it's just variations of this universe. There is rather one universe and multiple universal cycles. Now, that's not to say there aren't different frequency channels, okay? So within our reality, we have collective frequency domains. So we can switch to different modes of existence. This particular mode of existence that we're experiencing right now is not the only mode of existence. To say that it's a different dimension isn't really the right term, strictly speaking, but if it helps intuitively understand it, there aren't many different universes, there are many different dimensions. Now, dimension isn't the right word, they're collective frequency domains, but hopefully that can give you a flavor of the difference. And some of these differences might seem subtle, but they're really important and have a big impact on how reality works and what reality is. So a way to sort of understand it is multiverse is kind of like a bunch of televisions. Imagine a bunch of TVs, and each TV plays the same TV show, but each one has a tiny slight variation to it. And that's the only show that it can play. So you have, in multiverse theory, this is like having an infinity of TVs, and each TV plays the same show, but each show has a slight variation to it. That's kind of like multiverse, an infinity of universes, and each universe is a variation. How reality actually operates isn't like that. It's one TV, but within that TV, there is a vast multiplicity of different TV shows, different channels, and you can choose to tune into different channels by accessing different frequency domains. So it's a very important difference. So now when it says the meta-universe created and now continuously sustains our cosmos as a unified organism, and that it chose to create this manifest existence, what essentially happened was we chose to create this manifest existence, because that's what we are. We are the source. We are the absolute. We are all that there is. That is us. That is what we are. We are just experiencing reality right now in multiplicity and diversity through particular localizations, particular avatars, particular bodies. This world, the holos, the physical world, is what allows us to experience separation, difference, and diversity. And we can learn, grow, and understand together and gain more and more unity. We start off in maximal differences, and through learning and understanding together, we begin to synchronize and understand and learn and grow together and move towards more and more unity. Now, at the end of space-time, after we've all done our absolute maximal evolution, at the end of time, at the end of space, at the end of time, we have done absolutely everything that can possibly be done. We have exhausted all possibilities. And the journey would have been amazingly magnificent. But at the very, very end of time, of space and time, there's nothing left for us to do. There's nothing left for us to know. There's nothing left for us to experience. We've done it all. We know it all. We everything that could possibly be done, we've done. All that can possibly be is. And so what is there left to do? Well, there's nothing left to do but to start again. And so what we do is we fracture, and through this fracture, we give birth to a new Big Bang. So, and a new universe. And we do this journey again. It'll be a different content, not exactly the same, but it'll be a new universe that we give birth to. Now, the reason why that we do this is so that we can have this experience again in a different way. But again, rather than be stuck in that eternal, it would be hell if we were stuck in that eternal stasis forever. So, when we decide to create this new universe, we shatter ourselves and splinter ourselves into unconsciousness, into forgetfulness. Because if we retained our memory, there would be no point, because we've already done everything and know everything. So it would not be satisfying to do it retaining all that. It would be redundant. So what we do is through the Big Bang, we also do what could be considered like a memory wipe, and forget all that has been done so we can start again. So it's important to understand that this is us. This is what we are doing. It's not like there's some God force that's out there watching, goes, I'm going to create the universe, and pooh, the Big Bang, and it's behind there sustaining everything and watching and intelligent. That's not how it works. We are all that there is. In a previous iteration of the universe, we have grown together, learned together, and done everything that there was to do. And we had decided as a collective to start again and start over and give birth to a new universe through the Big Bang. And that's where we are right now. And we're starting to remember this, well, right now, as, you know, if you're watching this video and things are starting to click and you're starting to see the big picture, this is us remembering what we are and what we did and why what we are, and why we are here. Now, in a strict sense, I want to be careful with the word remember, because there's different ways that can be interpreted. But basically, we are having a realization of what occurred because it necessarily occurred. Not like an explicit memory, not like, oh, I remember when we decided X, Y, Z. Not like that. What I mean is that we are having an understanding of what occurred, because what occurred is necessary and must have occurred, and there's no other way that reality can be. So we come to more of a realization of what we are and what we must be. It's not a strict recollection of a memory. It is Plato said that all learning is actually remembering. And that is true. It just, semantics is the issue. Human language is this transcends human language, and a word like remember can be translated in different ways. It's not like you're literally bringing to consciousness an event that occurred, but rather you're coming to an understanding and a realization of a necessary relation, a necessary fact about reality that you had known at one point, but forgot, and now are remembering, not because of an event, but because it's a necessary attribute of existence, and you can come to that realization. So, the meta-universe is assumed to have been present before the Big Bang. So this is our idea of the source, and is the generative ground out of which our universe, including the fabric of space-time, emerges in a flow of continuous creation. Yes, the source continuously exists and always exists. It's the mental aspect of existence. Through all the different changes and occurrence in the space-time universe, the source is always there. It's kind of like if you imagine a hologram. A lot of people don't know how holograms work, but if you look at basic holograms, what happens is you have a light source and you shine it on a holographic plate, and then when you shine it on the holographic plate, you have the image. So what essentially happens is that you have the light source shines on the holographic plate, which has an interference pattern, and then that gives rise to the holographic image. If you were to shut off the source, what would happen? The hologram would vanish. So the source is always there. That even though, and that's kind of like this reality is the holos, it's always there, being sustained by the source. If the source were not there, we wouldn't be here. Just like if the light source were removed, the hologram would vanish. So you have these different aspects of existence. You have the source, and then you have the holographic plate, which can be understood as Fourier mathematics and understanding frequency functions being transformed into space-time functions, and now you have a holographic result. Now, it's not exactly the same. The holograms that we have today are just visual representations. We live in a reality that is of living mathematics and living waveforms that give rise to all the experiences that we have, every sort of experience possible, not just some sort of visual representation. So the meta-universe thus infuses, underlies, and transcends our cosmos, and that's what the source underlies, infuses, and transcends our cosmos. That's what we look at as the source. Now remember, the space-time universe we call the holos. And then what is the absolute? The absolute is both. The absolute is the source and the holos. The absolute is all that there is. The absolute is what we are. And when we come to knowledge of what we are, the absolute is coming to knowledge of itself through us, because that is what it is. It is what we are. So you can have the conscious aspect of the absolute, the unconscious aspect of the absolute, the mental aspect of the absolute, which is the source, and the physical aspect, the so-called physical aspect of the absolute, which is the holos. But all that there is are just different aspects of the absolute, and that is what we are. Now, each one of us is an individual eternal mind, but that is one node in the absolute neural network. So the absolute neural network is what we are. So you can see that that is just, again, another aspect of what we are as being particular nodes of the absolute, but also the network itself. So when our cosmos blossomed into existence from an area smaller than a pinpoint some 15 billion years ago, it emerged out of an infinitely deep domain of vast intelligence, creativity, and energy. That is the source. Now, and that was the end of a previous universal cycle. The term universe is used to refer to the still expanding system that emerged roughly 15 billion years ago along with the Big Bang, and that would be, in our terms, the holos. Here are some key properties of the meta-universe that seems congruent with insights from both East and West. And this is important because I've talked about this before. East and West, remember, reality is a mentally evolving organism. So the ideas of the East and the West have evolved in a very similar way to the functions of the left hemisphere and right hemisphere of the brain. Left hemispheric functions are things like logic, mathematics, structure, language, whereas right hemispheric functions are intuition, art, music, whole patterns having to do with the whole rather than separate linear pieces. And the right hemispheric and left hemispheric functions of the brain work together in synthesis. So when you understand language and speech, the left hemisphere of the brain understands language in terms of its rules and structure, the syntax, whereas the right hemisphere of the brain has to do with the meaning. So do you see the beautiful way that our world works in that we have two separate but unified aspects working together? Structure and form, meaning and content. You have the rules of language, the structure of language, the ordering of language, almost kind of mechanistic in a certain way, and then the meaning behind it, the emotion, poetry, the lyrics to music, what brings forth in you emotion and feeling. But they work together. They're not separate. You need to have both to be able to have this experience. And so many people today, because you see here the ideas of the East and the West evolved in a similar way. Western philosophy has to do with, very much like logic, very much the rules of pattern, the rules of understanding things in a very strict analytical sense, a very ordered sense. And then the East is a lot more intuitive, having to do a lot more with the spiritual nature of existence, the unified aspect of reality. We can see that in things like Advaita Vedanta and a bunch of different ideas. But the thing isn't that the East and the West, neither one is right nor wrong. They should synthesize and work together, just like the left and the right hemispheric functions of the brain. You can't have, if you have one without the other, you're not going to have proper functioning. And a lot of people, there's a lot of people who are either one or the other, in that some people are very just, very, very logical and mathematical, but they lack the understanding of the intuitive, unified holism of existence, that reality is, that we're all interconnected, right? They totally lack that. Whereas then you get the other end of the spectrum, where people can be all about, oh yeah, we're all one, we're all connected. But then they go to some really crazy ideas because they're not using logic and reason and mathematics to understand how it's all structured and flows together. So you have to have both. And you can see that the evolution of reality really reflects that left and right hemispheric functions of the brain with Eastern thought and Western thought. So key properties of the meta-universe are that profoundly creative, because we humans do not know how to create a single flower or cubic inch of space. The creative power of the meta-universe is of incomprehensible magnitude, depth, and subtlety. So to talk about in our terms, the source is the energetic frequency nature of reality. But that is what we are. We as minds are just individual units of collections of that energy. So we can learn to use that force in a creative way. So it really needs to be not looked at as some sort of external. You see how it's very externalized? Oh, we humans can't do X, Y, Z, but the meta universe is this. Well, it is what we are. We are the source, and we're able to use this energetic and creative force because we are that energetic and creative force. And it says we humans don't know how to create a single flower or cubic inch of space. Oh, really? Well, what do you do when you go to sleep and dream at night? You create an entire universe. You have that creative power within you. And we go out and express that every day through the works of art that we create. So, and just not just art, but extends to everything that we do, to externalize ourselves. Everywhere present, the clear, unbounded life energy of the meta-universe is present in all material forms as well as in seemingly empty space. Yes, that's correct. So the source is this as well. The clear, unbounded life energy, the frequency nature of reality, is present in all material forms as well as in seemingly empty space. Yes, it is. Okay, so the source is not inside of the holos, but it's also everywhere. Now, how does that make sense? Isn't that a kind of a contradiction? No, it's not. Because think about it like this. Again, if you have, think again, a light source, picture like a laser pointer. A laser pointer, then the holographic plate shines on the laser pointer, and then the hologram exists. Well, is that laser pointer, the source, literally inside of the hologram? No, it's not. It's outside of the hologram. Yet, it's also everywhere in the hologram in a certain sense, because the hologram is that light source expressed in its transformation, in a transformed way. So it's a transformation of that source. So the source isn't actually in it, but it's also permeated throughout it because it's a transformation of it. So non-obstructing, the meta-universe is a living presence out of which all things emerge, but is not itself filled in or limited by these things. Not only are all things in it, but it is in all things, mutual interpenetration without obstruction. And that's basically what I just described about how it's not technically in it, but it's also everywhere. And that's the sort of mutual interpenetration that's being talked about. You can see that they're different reality is one thing. It's the absolute. It's the all that there is. But there are different transformations that it can take on. The absolute can just be the pure source when there is no space and time, when there is no hologram. But the absolute can also be the holos and the source and all of it together, because the absolute is all there is. And it's just taking on different transformations, different forms. Kind of like how you can have water and transform it into ice or transform it into steam. Not exactly like that, but that's sort of one way to look at it. You can think of the water as being the source, and then ice floating in the water kind of being like material existence in a certain way. Okay? Not exactly the same, but a certain way. So utterly impartial. The meta-universe allows all things to be exactly what they are without interference. We have an immense freedom to create either suffering or joy. This is also accurate. So the source allows all things to be exactly what they are without interference. It's not some God out there that's watching over you and making certain things happen. No, it's us. It's what we are. The source is just the mental aspect of existence. So it's nothing that you can appeal to come in and intervene. It is what you are. And since it is what you are, it's up to us. We are that creative life force. So it's up to us to create the experience we want to have together. This universe is a collective experience that we have created. And we have created it right now. It's a really shitty creation because it exists in the form where it's ruled by self-interest and private interest, the rich elite capitalism, and they have contorted this world into a world that benefits them and shits on everyone else. But we can change that because we are the creative force. There's no God coming to save us. The source isn't going to intervene. We are what it is. So it's up to us to create the reality into what we so will. And on that note, this is our goal. Right now, there are 3 phases to existence: survival, planetary civilization, and then planetary independence. Right now, humanity is in the survival stage, and it's focused on self-preservation, nation against nation, seeing others as foreign and strange and enemies and a threat. We want to move away from that mindset to the next phase, which is planetary civilization, where we understand what we are, where we are, and why we are here. We understand that we are part of a united system together and experiencing each other in diversity. And that's a fantastic thing. And we're learning and growing and learning about ourselves through each other because we're all mirrors reflecting into one another, showing different aspects of ourselves and learning about different aspects of ourselves. And so we create a planetary civilization that's no longer about survival, but about thriving, where we're helping each other grow, learn, and transcend, where all of us are working towards reaching the highest point in Maslow's extended hierarchy of needs, which is transcendence, which means that we are working on our own self-actualization and helping others to self-actualize as well. And we exist in this society that will then be a feedback loop that is self-bettering and self-improving as we are all helping and aiding each other in mutual beneficial cultures and scenarios and situations. So ultimately ungraspable. The power and reach of the meta-universe is so vast that it cannot be grasped by our thinking mind. As the source of our physical existence, thinking process, and reflective consciousness, it is beyond the ability of our limited faculties to capture and concretize conceptually. Now, this is false. It is what we are, and so when we have full knowledge of ourselves, we will have knowledge of the source. So you might have heard that aphorism, know thyself, and a longer version, know thyself and you will know the universe and the gods. So it's not like they are leaning towards this idea of the meta-universe as being too close as to some sort of external thing. I know that they're not strictly saying it's external because they're saying that we are, born from it, etc. But it almost has that. It still has that mentality, probably left over from mainstream religion, that kind of taints everything and taints our thinking without realizing it. The meta-universe is graspable and we can understand it because it is what we are. And the only thing that we can't know is the experience of it, because they're a different category. So there is a difference between knowledge and experience. And you can know what we are. I mean, that's the whole idea here, is we're knowing what we are, where we are, why we are here. But the experiencing it is a different aspect, but just as important. So you don't want to deny experience, nor do you want to deny knowledge. You want to have both, and you want to see how they reinforce each other. Just like we talked about the left and right hemispheres of the brain, east and west, and all that. Same thing when it comes to form and content, and which has to do with knowledge and experience. So when it says that it's so vast it cannot be grasped by our thinking mind, that's not true. What we can't do is use our current limited faculties of the human brain, that the human brain limits and conditions us as minds, and filters our experiences. You through their apparatus of the human brain, we cannot know all that there is to know. We can't on command know what the spin of an electron is on the other side of the universe or something like that. But what we can do is understand the underlying mechanism of reality. We can understand necessarily what we are, where we are, why we are here. We can understand the big picture of reality, and we can have beautiful experiences of that reality and that totality. And as we grow and evolve, we'll be able to have more knowledge and more experience. And that's exactly what we want to do in moving humanity to the second phase of existence of a planetary civilization, is increase both our knowledge and meaningful experiences of ourselves and existence. And that's the whole joy of reality. And the journey of reality is that when we increase our knowledge and we increase our understanding, and we can create better worlds for ourselves, and create better experiences, have a better quality of life and understanding existence. And it's not just knowledge for knowledge's sake. It's knowledge and understanding for the purpose of giving ourselves and each other a better experience on this journey that we're all on together. We want the journey to be better, have more meaningful experiences, to extract satisfaction and joy and happiness from this experience that we're having together. So we can know it, and we don't want to limit. We don't want to limit ourselves. This is like our limited faculties to capture and concretize conceptually. No, that's incorrect. We are limitless, but we have certain tools that we're working with right now. We have our particular avatar, our particular brain, etc. But we can't access. I mean, we're talking about it right now, and we're understanding it because we're understanding ourselves as we talk about it. As you listen to this, as right now, as you listen to me, you are listening to yourself. And it's all a feedback loop, and we're coming to an understanding together, and we can create a better world through this sharing of knowledge, and both teaching and learning simultaneously from ourselves, reflecting into one another. Beyond form, the meta universe is the source of both material forms and the space-time within which those forms present themselves. Being the source and the context of all forms, the meta-universe transcends the world of form. So they're not using the word form in the strict philosophical sense of the term of form and content. They're using form to refer to like a physical manifestation. So if we're talking about form in the context of physical manifestation, yes, the source transcends form. It is beyond form, but on which form relies. I wouldn't refer to it as such because we want to be careful with the words we use. Form, when we talk about it, refers to structure. And the source is structured. So the source has form. The source does very much have form, not a physical form. So we can say that the source is beyond physical form, but not beyond the idea of just form itself, because it itself has both form and content. It has that structure, and it has the qualia that accompany that structure as well. So this one's, not quite right. So no objective measurement. It is impossible to prove the existence of the meta-universe through objective measurements, since it's the source and basis for all objective phenomena. The meta-universe is of infinite dimensionality, so we cannot limit it to the few dimensions that we inhabit so as to measure it. Okay, so I'm going to go, because I'm looking at the time, I'm going to go through these more quickly here so that we can move on. And I want to see how much of this we can get through. So let me, I could probably do an entire video on every single one of these things, but I'm going to try and limit myself and move through these quickly. So no objective measurement. Is this true? It's impossible to prove the existence of the meta universe through objective measurements, since it is the source and basis for all objective phenomena. Okay, so what they're saying is that they're using the word prove a little. Depends how one uses the word. So now we're getting to the difference between proof and fact and evidence and empiricism and rationalism. So it is true that you cannot produce physical evidence of the source, because the source is not physical, it's mental. Just like you can't produce physical evidence of your mind or your, let's say like a dream world. Let's say that I'm thinking of an apple right now. I cannot physically show you the apple that I'm thinking of, because it exists within mind, not within this dimensionality of space-time. However, one can prove these things rationally. We can understand these things must exist. We can't do it through physical experiments, but we can do it through rational proofs, knowing that reality must exist in the way that it does, because it's the only logical possibility that reality can be this way. Check out my video called the answer to the greatest philosophical question of all time, to get a little better understanding of why that is the case. But we can prove certain aspects of existence. Now we have to be very, very careful on showing what exactly it is that we prove, what exactly it is that is extrapolation. Today is not the time to get into that, but we'll get into that at some point. But from a paradigmatic perspective, we can rationally understand that existence necessarily must be a certain way and not have to rely on physical evidence, because you can't have physical evidence of that which is non-physical. A good way to understand this, I got to go through these quickly. Okay, real quick. A good way to understand this is like a computer video game and the code. Pretend that you're a character within the video game. If you're a character within the video game, you can't produce the code. You can't produce the ones and zeros of the code within the game. They exist outside the game. But you can understand by observing and knowing that, hey, this world that I'm in, it follows rules and has like a logical flow to it. You can know that that the code exists, because it must exist for the game exists logically. Same way we can logically understand the source as mathematical frequency that is a living system must exist for physical reality to exist. More than nothing, because the meta-universe can generate an entire cosmos with billions of galactic systems and life forms, it is much more than simple emptiness. Yes, the source is more than just nothingness as emptiness, as in non-existence. The source is not non-existence. The source is a singularity, which mathematically is equivalent to zero, which we can label as nothing, but it's also, the other aspect of it is infinitely everything, because you can equate zero to being an infinity by having every possible value balanced with its opposite. Plus one, positive one, negative one, positive two, negative two, positive three, negative three, on and on and on and on. So you can have a nothingness that is both nothing and something. Watch my video called, damn it, I don't remember what it's called. I don't know. I have videos on this as well. So it's not just emptiness. It is a nothingness that is full. You can kind of understand this a little bit through the laser pointer and the hologram analogy. You have the laser pointer and it's just that like singular source point, but then from that expands a vast hologram. It's kind of like that, but I have other videos on that. Immanent. The metaverse is not separate from us, nor is it other than the ordinary reality continuously present around us. The source follows this as well. I did that already with saying that it's it's everywhere, but it's not within. It's outside, because the source is outside of the holos, but gives rise to it and permeates it. Transcendent, the metaverse is of infinite dimensionality and reaches far beyond our dimensionality beyond bounded cosmos. Dependent on how one defines dimension, people use dimension all different kinds of ways, just like people use the word consciousness all different ways. It's true that we can understand the source as being infinitely dimensional, but also of 0 dimensions at the same time. It's net 0 dimensions, but we can also understand it as being infinitely dimensional if we're taking a look at the way Fourier transforms work. And in that, the space that Fourier transforms work can be thought of as like an infinitely dimensional space because of the laws of orthogonality. It just depends how one defines dimension. So kind of yes and no, but let's move on. Compassionate, to experience the subtle and refined resonance of the meta-universe is to experience unconditional love. Boundless compassion is the essence of the underlying generative ground. So this is a tricky one to, oh my God, I want to talk so much about each of these. So is the source the experience of total and complete, like unconditional love and compassion? It depends what one means by unconditional love and compassion, etc. What is the source? The source is perfect unity. It is the source of all things. So if one is experiencing just the source, you're experiencing pure unity. And if you define pure unity as love, if that's what you're defining love as, then you are experiencing love. If you define love as being something else, well, then you're not. So it depends on what you're defining love to be. You want to just be really careful and make sure that you're defining things logically, though, because remember, reality is both. It has the experiential content side of things, and then it has the formal structural aspect of it. And love is the experiential. I'm experiencing love. It's the experiential aspect of it. The formal part is the part where it's perfect symmetry, where there are no where there is no more any difference. It's just perfect symmetry, perfect unity. You don't want to confuse content with form and content, but they go together. They're also one thing, but separate aspects of the one thing. So is it infinite love? You can experience perfect unity. You can experience perfect unity as love. You can do that. But by perfect unity, we can understand, again, like the source and the hologram. The source is perfect unity. The hologram isn't. It's a bunch of separation. It's not perfect unity. If the hologram was perfect unity, there would be no hologram. It only exists because of the interference pattern, because of difference. So the hologram is the source expressed in difference. So if you're experiencing perfect unity, you can experience love. But that doesn't mean that we can't have, it's very complex, and you have to be really careful when you start labeling things with you just have to be careful when it can be misunderstood. So, but that's an important thing to understand, is that the source is unity. A hologram exists because of difference. And we can understand this right now. We're having this experience in this space-time universe, the source, the holos, because of difference. I am here, you are there. This person is tall, this person is short. There's a couch in my living room, and there's everything here is defined by difference. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Diversity is wonderful. It's not this like intrinsically evil or hateful thing. You see the kind of differences. You have to be careful when you start defining things between like love and hate and whatnot. You just have to be really careful, because this isn't an evil existence. This allows us to experience ourselves in diversity and to grow together and learn from each other and have the joy of experiencing each other in our multiplicity. So it's what we make it. It's what we can make it. It can be a terrible thing if diversity, if like, say, like a hateful racist and misogynist will see that diversity as being evil and want to destroy it. But that interpretation comes from a misunderstanding of what we are, where we are, and why we are here, and knowing that we are here not to destroy or eliminate or be afraid of the other or alien or foreigner, but to embrace our different aspects of ourselves and diversity and learn and experience and grow together and celebrate that. Okay, let's go. These extraordinary characteristics of the meta-universe are all useful in awakening our everyday thinking of the profound miracle in which we are immersed. Our existence at each moment is a priceless gift, spontaneously given by the meta-universe. Because we are continuously created from the unbounded life energy of the meta-universe, our essence is invisible, or more accurately, transmaterial. So, a lot of the things that they're saying about the meta-universe mirrors the source, but there are aspects that do not. And the aspects that do not is they're looking at it a little too much like bordering on a creator god. Now, I know that it's not that because they're talking about us being generated from it instead of some sort of externalized creation, but still talking about it as being like a priceless gift generated by it, and we are created from it. And it's almost like, oh, we should be thankful for it. But it is us, and it wasn't just some miraculous, spontaneous decision of it. It was us. It was our decision that we came together in the last iteration of the universal cycle, so we could have this experience again together. It is what we are. It is us. So to give an analogy, just as clear light can be divided with a prism to reveal of colors of rainbow, hidden within its transparent nature, so too can clear light of the meta-universe be divided into matter and consciousness so as to produce a rainbow of material expressance that is our material. Yes, that's 100% correct with regard to the source. You can look at pure white light going through a prism to refract into the beautiful, diverse colors of a rainbow. So you have that, pure unified light that goes through a prism and it engages in refraction and then produces a diverse array. Yes, that is like the source through the properties of Fourier transforms and wave patterns producing the diverse experience that we have together, while underneath always being unified. Do you see that important understanding? When we understand that underneath everything we are united and we are one, we can create a world that reflects that, where we're not hating each other, where we're not going to war with each other, when we realize that we're all in this together, and this is our own expression in diversity that we are having together, and we should be celebrating that and building a better world with each other and not trying to kill each other and hate each other because of it. Because underneath it all, we are united. Just like underneath that diverse hologram is the unified light source. We are the unified source expressing and understanding each other in our diversity. Let's see here. So there's a lot more to, wow, okay, Jeff. Okay, there's a lot more to this. So we will either do a part 2. If you want to see a part 2, let me know in the comments. When this replay is up, tell me in the comments. Because there's way more of this, and by God, I could talk so long about each one of these things. So if you want a part 2, let me know in the comments, and we will. If not, you can read this on medium.com. But if you want to see me do a video on it and talk about the source and the holos and the absolute and all that, then let me know in the comments. But I hope that this is been interesting to see that. Forget multiverse. Multiverse is such a primitive idea that's not enlightened or spiritual or anything like that. It comes from the idea of the world being matter and scientists trying to understand quantum mechanics in a very backwards materialist way that denies mind. The idea, what they're talking about here of the meta-universe, is extraordinarily more advanced. It puts mind at the heart of existence. It's not exactly right. There are some things that are wrong, but it mirrors our idea of the source in many different ways. So you can see how humanity is starting to wake up to this. And that's what's happening, right? Like this is what we want to do. We want humanity to all get on the same page so that we can create a new world, get into the next phase of existence of a planetary civilization, and start living in abundance and creativity and thrive, rather than the reality of scarcity and fighting for survival and dog eat dog. We can have a completely different experience of the world that we're living in. We create an entirely new world. So I hope you understood that, enjoyed this. Let me know what you think in the comments. Tell me if you want a part 2. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. It helps. And if you feel like you've ever learned something or gotten something from my videos, consider supporting on Patreon. You know, my goal is to raise consciousness and all this, and it helps a lot with contribution on Patreon. You get access to our weekly supporters live streams. We're having one right after this. You get access to our hidden Discord server, The Citadel. It's what allows me to create, keeps a roof over my head, allows me to keep creating content just like this. I want to give a big shout out to some of our top supporters on Patreon, especially Zach, Renaissance Sarah, Cassidy, Michael, Angela Maria, Top of the World, Ethan, DB, and Storm the Delta, and everyone else. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you'd like to support, please consider it. The link is right over here.